use a lot of different tools for language learning and language study. As you can see behind me, I have a lot of books, and I also love my electronic gadgets. I have an iPhone with all kinds of apps on there for language learning and listening to podcasts especially. I scan some of the older books that I have into PDF files. I'll cut the spine off the book and then run the book through my Fujitsu scanner and turn it into a PDF in just a few minutes, and then I can carry it on my iPad. Some books I don't want to do that to, but so I have my electronic gadgets and I have my books, but one of my favorite tools is an extremely low-tech tool for language study and language learning, and it's my 4-color pen. I hope you've seen these wherever you are, but I just love these things. There's 4 different colors of ink, and to switch from right now I've got it on blue, and then I can switch to green. You can hear the click, and then to red and black, and 4 different colors. I love this thing for studying, and I use it in lots of different ways. One of the ways that I use it especially is when I'm reading a book or even studying a textbook. But let me give you the example of reading a book right now, because I'm reading something a little bit funny in French. This book is called, let me see if I can get a good picture of it. There we go. Mon journal fut nul by Jim Benton, and it was written in English and then translated into French really well. This is a great book for me for a few reasons. I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm reading a book about the diary of a teenage girl who's going through high school. And it's silly, it's a funny book, it's really entertaining. But I'm reading this book for a few reasons. I've got all kinds of books here with French literature. I've got French readers of all different kinds. But this book, for me right now, is perfect for a bunch of reasons. One of the things that I like about the French that's used in this book is it's the kind of French that people speak. It's not the kind of French that is always written. One of the things that you will know if you're a French student is that in French there is a past tense that is used only for all practical purposes, only in written form. The historic past, or sometimes it's called the simple past. I have another book here that I'm reading. This is really an interesting book for me. This is written by a lady from France who I believe is now living in Ireland and comes to visit my city here, Vancouver, in British Columbia in Canada. This is a sort of a detective series. She's got a whole bunch of them about a crime scene, what is it called? A crime support unit here in Vancouver, BC. And it's all written in French. But this book, of course, will use the historic past or the simple past tense, because in French writing, that's what you use. It's very difficult to read a lot of stuff in French if you don't learn that, but you won't use it in spoken form. My primary interest is learning to speak and understand French, so it's spoken French mostly. But you know, this book is just so cool that if I learned the historic past just to read this one book, it'd be worth it. These are really fun. Not especially simple French, but you know, just interesting stories. The book again that I'm reading about this teenage girl and all her experiences in high school uses very colloquial, everyday French, the way that people talk in conversation. So when she's writing in her diary, she writes, you know, "Dear Dumb Diary," and then she puts in her entries of the day and how, you know, she's getting hassled by girls at school and the cute boys looked at her and that sort of thing. But she uses lots of expressions in the way that I guess teenage girls talk, but I think we all talk. Oh, isn't that cool? Wow, I wonder if he noticed me, and oh, it's just a question of time. All of these sorts of colloquial expressions that I want to integrate into my spoken French. So this is the kind of French that I want to learn because I'm focusing on spoken French. So I use my 4-color pen on this book, and I really don't think I can show you on the camera here, but I'll try. No, you can't see it, no matter how I adjust the book. But as I'm reading, I'm marking up words that I think I need to pay attention to, or words that are new to me. Sometimes I need to look them up because I don't know them at all, and I can't even figure them out in context. Maybe I could eventually, but it's just too time consuming. So I want to know. I mark up this book, I destroy this book with my 4-color pen. I mark up expressions, not just words, but expressions and language patterns that I want to pay attention to and notice and try to integrate into the way that I talk. Expressions that I use, especially things that make my French sound like I didn't learn it from a textbook. All of that kind of stuff I'm really interested in. And so I circle words that I don't know, and then when I do know them, then I will draw a line through them in different colors. I underline phrases that I either don't know right away. Usually I know the phrases, but they're things that I want to pay attention to because I think I can read that very easily, but I might not think to say it that way. I find that happens a lot with me, is that I can read and read and read and say, oh yeah, that was no problem. I could read all that. I could understand it all. And with my students too, same thing. They can read and understand everything, but they wouldn't say things that way. I want to learn how to say things the way a French person would say them. So I'm focusing on those things, and I'm circling little things. Like, one of the great difficulties, I think, for an English person who's learning French is getting all the prepositions straight and what preposition follows which verb. So I'll circle those and make a mental note of them, and then make up a few sentences in my head, like survivre being followed by the preposition à. An English person would read that and say, oh, totally, I understood that, but would not say it probably without consciously thinking about it at first. So I'm making notes of that kind of stuff with my pen. I go through the book once with my 4-color pen, mark it all up, and pick up a bunch of new vocabulary and expressions, and then I go back and read it again pretty easily without pausing at all. And I do read out loud. It's another thing that I think is really important. When you're reading, read out loud, because you are building muscle memory in your speech, and you don't want the first time that you use an expression to be when you are actually in conversation. So I want to be using language that's familiar to me. So I pronounce things out loud. Even if I'm sitting in Starbucks with my book and my pen, I talk out loud to myself in German and French and whatever else. Probably look a little bit weird, especially reading a book about a teenage girl's diary and reading it out loud and laughing maybe. Anyhow, this book is really funny too. It's really, really enjoyable. It helps to read stuff that interests you and that is enjoyable. I don't find very much of what I've read of French readers and French literature so entertaining as this book. I find this book really entertaining. Another way that I use my 4-color pen is with my cheap notebooks. These notebooks you can buy in Canada, and I'm sure you've got something similar in your country. They're really, really inexpensive, and I use these for vocabulary learning. I do something called the gold list method. And if you go on Google and search for the gold list method, you'll find some videos by a gentleman who has a pseudonym, calls himself Victor Huliganov when he's doing some of his videos. And he has a method for learning vocabulary, massive amounts of vocabulary that I've been using for German. In the last 2 weeks, or a little over 2 weeks, I've learned 1,500 new German words by working this system. Now, I invest a lot of time in vocabulary learning. It may be unreasonable for some people, but I spend a lot of time at it. I spend about an hour a day on my German vocabulary, and my goal is to learn 3,000 new German words in 30 days. A bit excessive. But I have students who are learning 1,000 new words a month in German, and they're having a blast. Anyhow, here's my book. Now, I tried holding the book up to the camera, and it just put my camera out of focus, so I'll have to give you a little bit of a peek, see if you can see it from there. Probably not. Oh yeah, that's not bad. There you go. So I start off with 25 new words in the top half. Sorry, I'm blocking my mouth. In the top half of this page, 25 head words, and these are new words to me, or words that I need to refresh. Then, according to the system, you leave that list alone for 2 weeks or a maximum of 2 months. You go back to it and you eliminate the 30% that you can recognize easily. and then you're trimming the list down, and they're called distillations. I won't teach the whole system here because Viktor Huliganov does it much better, but I use my 4-color pen for this. So I've got this, and when I write my head words, the first batch of 25 words, I write it in black. And then when I trim it down to the 70% that I recognize the least, I go to blue. And then on the bottom of this page, I trim it down to 12 words. So it's 25, then 17, and then 12. And then I have 8 words that I write in red. I find that writing these things in different colors helps the information stick in my memory. My 4-color pen is wonderful for that. So, by the way, if you do look up the gold list and you do try this method, which I'm finding surprisingly effective, you have to really follow the instructions closely. Some of the things that are said very briefly are really, really important. And I learned that out by not following it exactly. You just really have to follow it closely. One of the things that I discovered after I bought a bunch of books is that you have to make sure that the books have 40 lines per page. Otherwise, you won't fit your lists on there. And you go in a certain order as you write them in the book, and you have to follow that closely so that you can actually fit all the words on an open page in your booklet. But anyhow, that's my tip. I love my little 4-color pen. It's low tech, but I still love books. And I'm secure enough in my manhood to say I'm proud to be reading a book about a teenage girl's life in high school, and it's pink and great fun. One of the things you should know, by the way, about reading children's books or books for teenagers or that age, it's not necessarily simpler language. Sometimes the language in it is still very complicated, but it's good stuff to read when you've got anything with dialogues in it, anything that is in the kind of language that is spoken. So if you're buying books to read and you're trying to learn the spoken form of your target language, you want something that has a lot of speech in it, or something that seems like speech, as this book is, where the girl is writing in her diary and she writes, "Dear Dumb Diary," and then she's speaking to her diary. So she's not using the historic past, and she's not using literary language. She's using the kind of language that she'd speak with her friends. So low tech is good. Cheap notebooks, 4-color pens, paper books. I'm using a lot of digital books, but reading books that you open and read through that way, those are all great things. Massive amounts of reading are very effective, and a great way to pick up vocabulary, even if you're not consciously marking it all up. So here's my recommendation of the day, the 4-color pen. Have fun. I hope it helps.